Now, the Industrial Revolution also allows us to really introduce the concepts of socialism. Socialism did not just originate with Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, although they do definitely play a serious role in the development of social ideas. Socialism is basically this idea that the philosophers had about the ideas of liberty and equality, arguing that, well, when you were talking about that, that really tended to exclude a lot of the lower classes. It was basically just sticking with the middle classes. So a lot of the early socialists are saying we need reforms in society right now, reforms that are going to be instituted by the government, reforms in industry, reforms in farming, everything to try and help benefit these lower classes and make everything a little bit more open to everyone. So there are a variety of different social ideas or social reforms, and that's really where a lot of the trade unions and such came in. That if society was reorganized, if reforms would introduce, this would alleviate a lot of society's problems in the industrial world. Now, Marx and Engels are definitely socialists to begin with, but eventually they begin to see that these social reforms, they're definitely small changes that do help improve, and yet the end result is you're still going to have working classes, middle classes, upper classes, and the working classes will always find the deck stacked against them. So communism is an offshoot from socialism, and it's definitely far more radical because communism is specifically calling for a revolution of the workers or of the proletariat. Now, you're going to be reading Marx's manifesto, which is a very simplified version of his historic argument of the struggle between classes and why only revolutionary change is going to make a difference. That small social reforms are only going to allow the system to continue. Now, so you're going to be taking a look at that, and I want you to try and consider exactly what it is that Marx is saying about what communism really is, and what it is that society is saying that it's going to have to do. What exactly is this transformation of society? Now, eventually, we are going to see some major social reforms. Maybe they're there because there's a genuine recognition that lower classes cannot improve themselves. There are a large number of individual inspections and parliamentary inquiries in England about worker safety and about women and children's work. A number of middle class women, because they now have the luxury to not really necessarily worry about working out in the world, begin to very much develop or further their development into their home life, looking after the family, looking after the children, looking after the household, and making that their primary concern rather than also the business of their husband. And so they're going to be very concerned about the woman's proper sphere, getting her from away from work. So you have examples like, I think, Betty Granville, the very beginning of the textbook, when it's talking about women working in the coal pits. And so you have these individuals who end up going, investigating these child labor sources, and places for work and saying, you know what, this isn't good for our society. It might be cheap, but we're actually running a very great risk in doing this to women, to children. And so there are going to be regulations against certain work that women can do and against child labor. There also might be the recognition by these factory owners, by these industrialists, that it's definitely beneficial for them to have a regular, happy workforce, or at least a less resentful workforce. And so also regular consumers, and also the fear of continued violence. So pay them a little more, have a little bit in the way of stipend and sick leave, those changes that Otto von Bismarck did for United Germany. This is definitely going to increase the bond between society and their government if they know that the government is looking out for their welfare. And so what these writings, these inspections are going to do from the social reformers, from the communists, they're going to result in many significant social reforms. Child labor mostly is going to be eliminated. Although, if we're talking about a family business, there's quite a bit of leeway on what the children are allowed to do there. Women's working roles are going to be extremely curtailed. And while education is definitely provided for children, there's still quite a bit of resistance about supplying equal education to both boys and girls. Again, that influence of the middle class women, although they're talking about education, they're talking about education in order to provide better future mothers and wives. Not necessarily education to become better scientists, better mathematicians, better writers, etc. And then you're also going to see the legalization of labor unions. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that they're always going to be accepted or they're always going to be welcomed by management. And yet, it does provide a better sense of organization for management and workers to try and work out their differences.